Hi, smart moms and dads. Welcome to another episode of the Brainy Moms Podcast, brought to you today by Learning RX Brain Training Centers. I'm Dr. Amy Moore, here with my co-host Sandy Zamalis. And before we introduce our guest, we want to invite you to sign up for our free monthly newsletter at thebrainymoms.com. It includes free stuff, information, and tips about topics that we cover on the show, more stuff about parenting, homeschooling, so don't miss out. Sign up at thebrainymoms.com. And now our conversation today is with the fascinating Timber Cleghorn. Let me tell you a little bit about him if you don't know who he is yet. Timber is a humanitarian aid worker and survivalist. He grew up off the grid as one of 11 homeschooled siblings. He's worked his way through the complexities of learning the modern world and settled into a lifestyle of international aid work in conflict zones. He's the author of the book Memoir of a Wild Man, where he chronicles his experience and reflections from being a contestant on season 11 of the survival show Alone, Arctic Circle. And he's here today to talk to us about how his experiences and his faith have shaped him, how he approaches the world, and how it's influenced his parenting. Welcome, Timber. We're so excited that you're here today.
Thank you, Dr. Amy. It's great to be on the show and good to meet you guys.
Hi, Timber. Nice to meet you. I just told Amy that my husband is the one who convinced us to camp.
Like to go camping, to get out and set up a tent and do all that?
Well, Sandy said that her husband insisted they go camping. And I said, that's not okay. You can never insist to anyone that they go camp. I mean, that is something that you have to choose voluntarily, willingly, and with passion. That is not something that anyone can insist that you do. It's just not.
Well,
okay
I didn't
with
have
me.
passion.
I agree.
I did go.
I agree. I could not agree more. And then if someone's forced into it, I don't know how a guy would think that he's going to have a lot of fun out there with someone who he forced into it. I mean, he's got to think that through.
Exactly.
Well, in fairness, yeah, go ahead. I was going to say, in fairness, he prefaced it as the kids will love it. And they did. So it made it easy.
I feel like that sentence is the precursor to a lot of misadventures. The kids will love it.
Exactly. Well, I got super lucky because my husband is an avid outdoorsman, and he keeps talking about buying a van, the Sprinter vans that you can just go be by the lake on.
Mhm.
I don't know, whatever. And I'm like, I might make it one night in a Sprinter van, maybe one night in a Sprinter van. And that, I mean, I'm a glamper, right? So roughing it is a 3-star hotel, right? Like I just am not, I'm an indoor girl. No, that's just not okay. But I'm a boy mom. I have 3 sons. And so it was perfect. It worked out perfectly because he could schlep them up one mountain and down the other. And I was home in the air conditioning.
Oh man, that's how my wife feels about horseback riding. When we dated, I used to take her riding all the time. And then after we got married, I found out that she hated it and she hates horseback riding. She's like, you go do your thing. We're married already.
Yeah. Do you feel like that you were deceived? Because my husband feels deceived. He had a Jeep when we were dating. And I'm like, he's like, you used to love having the top down on the Jeep when we were dating. I'm like, yeah, well, we were dating. So of course I loved it. Now that you've
loop
married,
my wife
maybe
in on this and get some notes down here. Come on.
Right.
I'm cracking up. Oh man.
In all honesty, so Rebecca, who reached out to you, is our PR director. And normally she asks me about guests. Like I'll tell her, hey, I want these people on, or I want this person on, or she'll say, hey, what about this person? They've applied to be on. So she didn't actually ask me about you. And I saw you on the calendar and looked you up, and I emailed her and I went, Rebecca, what am I supposed to talk to him about? I am an indoor girl. Like, I don't understand. And she's like, no, he was on Christy Faith's podcast. It was so fascinating. I'm like, okay, Christy's a friend of ours. So I go and I watch the Christy Faith podcast. I'm like, okay, he's a cool cat. Totally interesting. Even though I'm an indoor girl, we can find fun things to talk to you about. Yeah, for sure. And so then about I don't know, 4:00 yesterday afternoon. I'm like, I better go buy his book. So I download your book on Kindle, and now I can't put it down. Like I got up at 4:30 this morning trying to finish the book because I cannot put it is so good. And then I say to my husband, I'm like, you got to read this book. It's in our Kindle app. You're going to love it. You're going to love how he sets up fishing traps. And because, like I said, he is an avid outdoorsman. He's not a hunter, but he's a fly fisherman and ice fisherman. Like if it's outside, he'll do it. It's a cool book.
We would get along well. I'm so sorry because I meant to mail you a copy of the book. I think I sent a quick note about that like a month ago. And now I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, oh, shoot. I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm happy to buy it. I'm happy to support your author revenue.
I apologize. I didn't mean for you to even need to buy it. I wanted to have you a hard copy in your hand with weeks to spare so you could glance at it, and I just dropped the ball. I mean, it's been a hectic season, but I don't really have an excuse.
You can send me a signed copy later.
Because she's a fan now.
Yeah, I'm a fan now.
And
well, what you said about it, the fact that you're joining it, that means a lot to me. Thank you very much.
Just for cool notes, are those the moose horns from the show alone?
Yeah, that's my moose head and my arrows.
So cool. That is so cool.
My arrows hanging there, which I've been putting meat in the freezer with these arrows all winter and fall here.
That
crazy.
Is so cool.
That's amazing. Yeah, so I've never seen the show. I've seen previews for the show. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, and so Rebecca might make me edit this part out. But when I've seen previews for the show, I've said, no, you just have to kill me. Like, I couldn't even do the helicopter ride to get there.
Well, it's not for everybody,
Like-
you know, and even viewing the show is not for everybody because I look at it and I'm like, you know, I'm enjoying this because I'm really into people's survival tactics and their mentalities that they take in here with life. If I weren't, I would be bored to death watching the show. So I don't even know how the show is popular. It's popular with me because I love that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But I look at how slow it is, how long it takes sometimes for something to happen, and I don't understand how viewers out there are like into it. You know, I really scratch my head. But it was one of the coolest avenues in my life to get into, you know, broader things like, you know, the Christy Faith podcast and be able to talk about my childhood growing up as a big-time homeschooler, you know, one of 11 homeschooled kids in the middle of nowhere with no electricity and running water. You know, it's gotten me to be able to break that open a little bit and to discuss it with different people who are kind of in a similar state of mind, like looking at the modern world these days and being like, whoa, you know, it's dangerous to be a part of it. You know, we need to have our own thing going on, which I think is really good. But I think the show has really helped me in that way to be able to, I think that's one of the things that's meant the most to me about it is that it's helped me as you crack open that box and be able to discourse about it from kind of like from the dark side, you know?
Yeah. So I don't usually like spoilers, but but how long did you last? How many days did you last?
I know. You don't know. Sorry,
okay, so
Amy.
how many days or months did you last?
83 days.
83 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Sandy. I was out there 83 days. And it's a long time not to hear another human voice, really.
Right? Yeah, because you write that even when the medics would come and take your vitals, they wouldn't talk to you. You would talk to them, but they wouldn't talk back.
Yeah,
to
they
you.
try to really preserve that integrity of the isolation because the producers explained to us what the show is really about is not about survival. It's about what happens to the human mind in isolation with nothing but nature, you know, and some beautiful things happen, some bad things happen. So that's what the producers want it to be about and why they edit it that way. So when they come out to check on the medical check, they don't discourse with you. We're really preserving the integrity of the fact that you are alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then one other question. So I know the winner gets $1 million. You were the runner up. Did you get anything? Or is it $1 million or
No,
nothing?
there's nothing for the runner-up.
It should
It's
be
nothing.
like a sliding scale, right? Like if you're number 2, you should get
Thank
half
you.
that, right? Because that's an accomplishment.
I say so. You know, And I even told the producers, because it's actually $500,000. Most shows of this type are $1 million, like Survivor and Outlast, and they're $1 million. But this one is still stuck at $500,000. And by the time you get it home, it's $250,000 because of taxes if you're in the U.S.
Yeah.
And so I told the producers, I'm like, look, man, inflation is happening. You got to, when we're about to launch, I'm like, you got to up this thing. And he looked at me and he said, there's other people ready to take your place. And I shut up.
Yeah. Well, but that was a dream for you, right? I mean, you weren't doing it for the money, I assume. You were
Yeah.
doing it for the experience.
That's true. That's true. That's true. I mean, the money's in your mind, you want it, but then at the end you realize that it's the most insignificant thing that you could possibly approach something like that for the purpose of. It's you're very right.
You have a fascinating history, Timber. And so I'm going to give you a chance to kind of share with our listeners kind of who you are, how you came to be this huge advocate for, survival and really getting to the basics of life. In fact, I love your motto at the bottom of your website, which is "There's more to life than the avoidance of death." So I know that's kind of broad, but that's just so true. So give us a little bit more about your background and how you ended up on a show called Alone.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't myself perceive my story as particularly fascinating, but I do understand that it's very different from what a lot of folks experience, especially in our Western world. I did grow up off grid with, no electricity, no running water is basically what that means. We did everything by hand, from plowing the field with horses or without horses, just by hand. And growing everything we ate and living away from society. So I was kind of like a addict child in that way. When I left home, I did not know how to order food at McDonald's or anything about the modern world. Didn't know how to speak to human beings, really. So that's a big part of my story, is just going from one to the other. The reason we lived that way is out of fear of society at the time. I think that my parents were very alarmed about different events from the Waco, Texas raid incident and other things going on in the nation, and they wanted to disappear, basically, to dig a doomsday bunker kind of in the hill and vanish and be safe and teach the children the way they wanted them to be taught, and stuff like that. So, and I don't particularly knock any of those things, but I mean, I myself choose a different approach to things when the world seems chaotic. Hiding isn't always the answer. And so that's kind of, coming from that background and then coming into the modern world and kind of learning it a bit and then moving into international aid work. That's kind of my story trajectory. Lots taken place in there, but, it's just kind of happened naturally over time. I got married a wonderful lady named Kara. We have 3 kids. We do international aid work in conflict zones, which all kind of started on a mission trip years ago. But now we work Ukraine, Tajikistan, Afghanistan border, a lot of different really mixed up places, and find a lot of fulfillment through trying to help folks who are in desperate situations. And then I've kind of always been a wilderness person, a hunter and survivalist at heart, and that's kind of what led me to get on the show Alone. Came back from 2 years of particularly difficult aid work with a lot of chaos and death kind of happening all around us, and decided that we needed some time away and got my family to the States. And then I applied for this survival show, and I just did it on a whim, and they called me. I was blown away and went to the Arctic and spent some time up there killing moose and fish and surviving and putting it all on TV. So that's kind of my arc right there, I guess.
So was the appeal of going on a survivalist show to test yourself, to push your body to limits, to see how well those skills that you had kind of honed over your lifetime, to see how well you could do? Or was there something more? Did you want the aloneness with nature? Did you want that time alone with God to grow that relationship with him? What was the appeal? Like, what motivated you to really want to be there?
Um, all of it is appealing, test your skills and see how you stack up against other woodsmen and, the possibility of the money at the end. All of that was appealing, but the main thing to me was um, being in a place where no war was going on in the most
Mm.
extreme way, to have no killing nearby, no bombs exploding, nobody needing evacuated or, medical treatment. And that seems selfish a bit, but I did really need it at the time. I'd gotten really crosswise in my soul about all of that, and I needed that. So I think that was the main thing, and that's why, I went through those doors, and it felt so good, is to be in alone with God is one definite way to describe it, but to be completely away from war, for a while. And then I just didn't expect how good it would be to be alone with God during that time.
Yeah, my husband always talks about how he feels closer to God while he's fishing or hiking on a mountain than he is in the church building. So that
Yeah.
sort of reminded me of that. As you talked about like memorizing Psalm 27 before you went out there so that you could repeat that to yourself, and how um it sort of morphed into this freestyle psalming. I love that you kind of termed it that, right? Like whatever it was, about God that you were feeling or thinking at the time, you were vocalizing as a way to keep yourself calm or motivated or comforted, right?
Yeah, true. And I really identify with how your husband feels in that way. I mean, you'll find me in a church fairly regularly because there's a lot of importance to it, but to me, that's very little connection to where I do my worship. I'm in the wilderness, I'm out there with the trees. I'm talking to God out there in the fields or mountains or something. And I don't know why it's that way, except for the fact that it seems that God speaks in silence, and the silence is good. Silence, and I've understood now that it's good for my kids too. You try to give them some silence for their minds and their growth and stuff like that, and I want God to speak to them as well. But yeah, it's a big deal to undergo that and to be away from all the noise and to find what God has to say to me there. Church is good, but that's not my main scene.
Yeah, my husband actually is on the security team at church and volunteers more than most do because he likes to be outside in the sunshine. Right. So we
Mhm.
joke, well, I'm going to church today, but you're going to the church today because he's not actually
Right.
inside. He's outside, patrolling the campus in the sun. Like there's something about that exposure to the
That's
sun.
such a good way to term that. That's such a good way to term that. And then all those alone moments like that when when your mind is thinking on God anyways, maybe his is because it's Sunday. In the Arctic, mine was thinking on God because I knew that he would have something for my soul to be away from the chaos of the world. And you're thinking on God, and then it just naturally turns into things that you've tucked away in your memory, like the Psalm 27 reference that you just made, which became super meaningful to me out there in the wilderness. Psalm 27 is such powerful and good words, just filled with life, and I would quote that a lot. And then start to realize, like, it doesn't just have to be Psalm 27. I'll express it in the same way. What's going on in my soul? Man, I'm grateful for this land, and I'm grateful to be a creature, a wild creature, even running around. And I'm just gonna say it, however it comes out, And then I really love that.
Yeah. And I love that you said, okay, those were David's words, right? So the Psalms are full of lament and why, and this is hard, and oh my goodness, right? Like, how am I going to survive this? And then there's this shift, right, in that psalm where David, for most of the Psalms, would go, but God, right? And then it switches from this lament to this hope. And so when you're able to turn those words to yours, right? Like, this is my lament, and this is my suffering, and this is my struggle, but I have hope in you, Lord. But God, I just found that to be beautiful.
I love that concept so much. I mean, I think that that makes it so much more poignant in our soul than most sermons that we could hear, when it's somehow God dealing with in those kind of words straight with the heart, straight with your heart. It's so important. But yeah, I'm glad that stood out to you too. I hope it stood out to viewers of the show as well, because it gave me a lot of strength. I know that there's a lot of souls out there just absolutely broken in two, worn down, traumatized by different things. And these words are life-giving, because there's basis to them.
All right. So, and I'm usurping the conversation, Sandy. I'm sorry. My brain is just going a mile a minute with all of the cool stuff that we can talk about. One of the things that I started thinking about was how can you? Okay, so you've been through so much. Like you've been through a lot, right? Through your entire life. I mean, and you professionally, you work in conflict and war zones, right? And so just looking at that and seeing that and surviving that, right? That alone is a lot. But, your childhood was hard, and then you've subjected yourself to this, hard to survive in show. What lessons can you take from overcoming all of that adversity, facing all of that danger? What lessons can you take from that and apply it to the smaller things? Like, how do you bring that home to your everyday life? Because do you have this tendency to downplay the small struggles, like with your kids or your family? Like, man, look at what I've been through. That's nothing. Or are you able to quickly say, hey, when I've struggled, this is something that's worked for me, regardless of how big or little the struggle was? Talk to us a little bit about that.
You just pinpointed something that's an enormous topic, and I've struggled with deeply, because for quite a few years, I noticed myself coming back to the States for a furlough or whatever, and then having a neighbor heartbroken because she can't find her cat, and then you just saw another mother heartbroken because she can't find her children, maybe. And then that really stands out to you, in my human brain of trying to put things on a scale, which I think now just isn't right. I've struggled with my response to that being unkind or belittling, like, pull yourself together. What do you think you're doing? It's a cat, for Pete's sake. You're stressed out because, your window screen has a rip in it, like, you've got a window, think of that. And then understanding later through, I think primarily through what God showed me on Alone, really brought it home, is that that's not the response that God has towards our griefs and sorrows. Is to come and be like, that's a little one. Don't be stupid, because the bottom line, grief is grief. In our human minds or souls, we don't always have a box that's small or big to keep it in and understand it. It's just grief is like a liquid. It takes over your soul, whether it's coming from the smallest thing or the largest thing. Trauma is the same way. And I understood then that God is kind in any level of scale, whether I needed a fish, and that's what I needed, or whether it was, I'm going to freeze to death. I need a solution, to big thing, small thing. He had ears for both, is what I felt. And then I understood that I need to adopt that into my life and mentality, so that if I am with a bunch of refugees who don't have a home, or if I'm with a neighbor who just needs help, mowing his yard because he's elderly and the belt on his mower broke, both are about the human beings. It's not about the scale of the need for the world, because it's wrong, I think, for us to approach the world, and this is one of my big hangups, as if, the weight of the world is on our back, and so we have to really select those things that are the most meaningful for the entire world, and then trample right over little individuals, like even our children. And I know the early part of my aid work and mission work was oriented that way a lot. Like, man, we got these big needs of the world on our back. My kid just needs it not at time for the afternoon. But now I look at it very, very differently. I think my child's need for spending time with me in an afternoon is equally as great as the need of 1,000 people at a river crossing needing to get through a bridge. I think that it's the same to me. And I don't know if that's doctrinally the correct way to look at it, but it's helping me to be kinder. And that's one of the takeaways from the show, that. And then also one of those things that, to answer the second part of your question, where I can bring something to people who are suffering, and feel like it can help, is that two things that my life hovers around and I find most helpful to me is, firstly, everything I do is based on the belief in eternal life. Man, I mean, without that, there's no point. And the second thing, especially after alone, is thankfulness. No matter what's going on, no matter how grim all the tasks are going to look for the day, I try so hard when my eyes open to stop before anything and frame my being for that day in these words: bless the Lord, oh my soul. Thank you for this beautiful day that we're going to live. I don't know what it'll bring: grief, hardship, all this kind of stuff, but it helps me. It really, really helps me. And I found that can trickle around, and just the positioning ourselves in gratefulness can help any sufferer for sure. As long as we're not like using my gratefulness as like a plane, like, well, I'm above you, just be grateful. And it's an insurmountable jump. How can I be grateful when I just lost my son or something like that? There's a soft approach to anybody, but that's what I think, that's the best answer I could give on that huge question. That's too big of a question.
Oh, I love that though. And doctrinally, right, as you questioned, I mean, Jesus says, come to me all who are weary and I will give you rest. He does not say, come to me all who are weary from solving the world's problems only. Right? It's unconditional. Come to me all who are weary. So it can be weary from searching for your cat, or weary from fixing your broken window, or weary from international, humanitarian aid relief.
Yeah.
Right? Weary is weary, and rest is rest in the Lord.
That's a good word right there.
Well, I want to dive in a little bit to, you were talking about that gratefulness piece. And we've kind of highlighted that you had a really, you've had a hard life, in that there's been a lot of things that, like I have never experienced, and probably many of our listeners have never experienced. And now as a parent, right? Always as a parent, we filter like our history, right? And we want to pick out the good stuff that we want to pass on to our kids, and, protect them from the stuff that we don't want them to have to experience as much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
What for you, Timber, are the things, and maybe it's from, communing with nature and kind of the skills that you've learned through your lifetime. What kinds of things in your home are super important to you that you want your kids to, in their short time that they're with you, to really impact them for their life and their future?
I want to do it in two parts, the negative and the positive. So on the negative, I want to break cycles that I've had ingrained in me and accidentally even brought in. I want to break cycles of making decisions in fear. Anything in my children, I see, okay, we're going to decide how we approach this out of a basis of fear. Like, let's reframe that, and I want to give that to my children, about breaking that cycle of, every single decision I've ever seen in life, whether it's in, a military setting, or if it's in homeschool, or how to approach it. If it's made out of the basis of fear, we're afraid of something, and so we're going to do this. I've always seen it lead to darkness. Now, that's only my experience, but I believe that that's just systemically that it probably does. So I want to break that cycle. And then on the positive side of things, I would really love it just to know that my children are kind, and kindness pretty much to me encompasses every other positive virtue, be unselfish, giving, aware of others, not self-absorbed and things like this. So that's one of the big principles that my wife and I focus on really diligently, is in everything that we do in our family. I want my children to be kind if they're interacting with each other or with their teachers or stuff like this. And I think that word kindness kind of embodies a little world, a little universe of all kinds of other strategies and, characteristics and things like this that kind of belong under that umbrella. But I think those are the two the two different things, the right side and the left side, tension, the break the circles of fear, and kindness and love really, can blend into the same word, 'cause those are, I think, the two positional bases of our worldview point, and so that's what we are trying to really focus on hard. We lose the battle a lot of days, a lot of moments, we don't have it together, but that's what we're pushing for.
And now, another success story from our sponsor, LearningRx Brain Training Centers. Here's what Jacoby from Atlanta, Georgia said about his experience at LearningRx. I just wanted to say how thankful that I am to have been recommended LearningRx. Before now, I did not fully understand the power of cognitive training and the difference that it could make in my everyday life as a graduate student. Through their expertise, my attention to detail, processing speed, and overall academic confidence have all improved considerably. I recommend these services to both children and adults who've had to work extremely hard to excel thus far or are just looking for ways to improve mental sharpness. At LearningRx, we target the root cause of learning struggles, cognitive skills that need to be strengthened. Every child is different, and you or your child may or may not achieve the same results as Jacoby, but give LearningRx a call to see if brain training is the next best step for you or your child. Around the world in our centers and over Zoom, we've worked with more than 130,000 children and adults who struggled with thinking and learning. Visit learningrx.com or call 1-866-BRAIN01. Mention that you heard about us on the Brainy Moms Podcast to get a special pricing on the cognitive skills assessment. That's 1-866-BRAIN01 or learningrx.com. I love in your book, you use the word wild, right? You're a wild man. And that reminded me, I was telling Amy, it reminded me of a book years ago by John Eldredge, slightly different, but it was like Wild at Heart. I don't know if you ever read that book. But
I have it. I think I've worked through partway, but I'm aware of it. It's a great book. Yeah.
But the whole principle, at least in my mind, based on, everything you've shared and your story, and then also just from other things I've read, is really kind of coming back to who we are at that wild at heart piece. There is a wildness in all of us. Amy and I were joking that we're both indoor girlies, but but there is something to be said about getting back to the basics or rooting yourself to the earth in some way, whether it be, learning a basic skill, a survival skill, there's so many out there. And while Amy's husband is the fisherman, and loves to be outdoors, my husband's more of that like Army prepper kind of we've all got it in us a little bit. How much of that wildness do you include in your family time and how you parent your children?
I think that if I look at my family and I think I'll parent them the best if I'm the best version of myself that I can be, that's going to incorporate a certain amount of wild time. So we all do like camping and, fishing and, expeditions and being out in the nature of the mountains or whatever. And objectively, my wife enjoys as well. She likes hiking. She's fairly outdoorsy, and I'm lucky in that way. But I try to temper that with looking at my kids and saying, while I want that to be the basis, I want to be the best me that I can be, and for them to see me just thrilled and enjoying things, and then they'll be happy, especially as they're young. I think as they grow older, I'm starting to see that, well, they're not going to be just like me. They're not going to necessarily have the same interests that I do. And one of my great fears is that one of my sons will like race cars or something, because, to me, that's just a dead world. What would you do that for?
One of my sons is a motorcycle racer, so I'm
oh man.
Totally
Well, stop him from listening to this podcast. He won't like me well.
I promise he doesn't listen to this podcast.
Oh.
That's hilarious. I won't mention that my husband's currently building a streetcar, but
okay. Let me just back up.
I look at other humans and I'm like,
my thought process there was, this is a child who grew up afraid of everything. Like everything that Jeff tried to introduce to him that was outdoorsy or fast. My husband's a retired fighter pilot, right? So he's like, whatever brings adrenaline, he's there. And so
Wow.
This is a child who grew up afraid of everything, like everything. And then to all of a sudden start racing bikes, racing motorcycles,
That's huge.
is the
That's huge.
shift that we're all like, who are you? And what have you done with our kid? Right? He's 25. But anyway, when you said that, I thought, well, actually, there is something to this conquering fear that he walked through in that decision-making process, right? Like there's something
Oh,
there that maybe
yeah.
it is. He also has a regular job as well, but there's something to that, right? That it was a fear conquering, not just
Yes.
adrenaline seeking choice.
That's huge. And then as a parent, that has to just thrill you when you see that take place. Even though you might be like, oh no, he's racing motorcycles, but you still see him conquering fear. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So
Well, he
thrilling.
wears Kevlar and I mean, he's pretty well. I mean, it's on a track. So,
Yeah,
I
that's
guess it's the
good.
best scenario
That's
there
good.
can be for being a, bike racer. Anyway, back to what you were saying. Sorry to interrupt. So
Oh, no
talking
problem.
about, um, you were talking about introducing your kids to the best person that you can be while still exposing them to wild things.
Right. I want to give them freedom to be their own individuals and to be interested in different things than I am. What I don't want to create is a situation in which they're like, well, my dad did this, so I have to grow up and be somebody in the survival world. And then maybe feel like they never measure up because it wasn't their thing and then have underconfidence in themselves about that. I don't want to ever foster a situation like that. So yesterday, for example, I took my oldest son, Levi, hunting. He's 11. And he had mentioned that he wanted to go deer hunting this year. And the season's almost over. It's muzzleloader season, so I take him out. And I just have gotten the feeling that he's not really into it. So I'm watching him. We get out there, we're waiting. And he requested it. He knows I'm into it. It was my birthday, so he wanted to do that with me. And we get out there and I'm like, he's not really into it. We're waiting. It's boring and he's fidgeting and I can see that he wants to go to the house. So I'm like, I need to spend some time learning him more than just getting absorbed in my thing and having him along with me. So I tried to reframe it to him. I'm like, Levi, when I'm hunting, sometimes I imagine different worlds. And I was like, what if you were suddenly, if we're in the woods here and if we're back in the dinosaur days, what sci-fi weapon would you choose to take with you? And he's like, oh, he's really into that. So he's thinking through all these movies and sci-fi weapons and stuff. And I'm just using that as an illustration for how I want to give my children space and not be like, shh, be quiet, we're hunting, this is how you do it, right? Even though I felt like doing that because he was noisy and we weren't going to see any deer. But I understand, they might not want to do what I do. And I'm a weirdo, I'm a strange and wild, crazy person, and it's not for everyone. And if I make my kids do that, I might really make them unhappy and therefore maybe even upset at me someday. And I'd be heartbroken to have the same thing between me and my sons as came between me and my dad, when I was young. So I keep that in mind a lot.
Is that how you had that awareness? Like, were you initially as a parent, hey, we're going to do this because I love to do this and this is great and you're going to enjoy it? Like, was there a shift that happened when you said, wait a minute, I need to be aware of what is bringing my child joy in this moment too? How did you come to that
There was
place?
a shift for sure. I'm not really sure. I've never been asked that question. And so having not thought it through, I know about the time frame that it happened, but I think it was just through contemplating how painful it must be for my dad and for myself to have gone through what we went through. And then looking at my son Levi when he was 2 and 3 years old and thinking, if I just let life happen, that'll happen. I know it'll happen. So what do I need to do? And like I said, I don't win all these battles. I make mistakes with approaching my kids a lot, I know. But I'm trying to be really intentional. I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to say, if I assume that I've made it, I'm gonna make horrible mistakes. If I don't grow, I just have this desperate feeling that I've got to grow with my kids because I can't stop them from growing. If I was doing great with them when they were 2, they're a different person when they're 3. So I have to desperately seek growth to match or exceed them, you know. And to grow as a human, once we reach adulthood, does take intention, because we'd like to level out and be like, well, life is going all right. I know what to do in this, and then so just cruise. And if growth stops, though, we'll die in some way, I think that was the mentality that helps me approach my kids different each day. But I'm not exactly sure, like, if there was a moment or an event that helped it to be except just my childhood, just having my childhood in mind. I spent a lot of years really miserable, wanted to kill myself, if you probably know, if you've read the book there and stuff. So I want to grow for my kids' sake, and that's all.
Yeah. You talk about how failure was not an option for you as a child, like that's how you were raised. But y- you, you were going after that moose and failed the first time, right, to get it. And then
Mm.
you got him the next try. Um, how did you overcome that failed opportunity, right, to get a winter's worth of food? Plus, it's the hunt, right? Like, this is sport for you too, in a way,
Mm.
right? Like, it's how do you
Yeah.
take that failure and pick yourself back up and say, okay, what did I learn from this, and how am I going to apply this tomorrow?
Well, that's a good incident for me to study on it, because that moose was a big deal. When I missed it, I'm like, well, it happens to miss animals, but it never happens when you're playing for $500,000 and need to survive. Never happens when you're this hungry, and it also never happens when everyone gets to view it on TV, and see, oh, look at that guy miss, and then you hear all the jeers, which actually do happen as the show airs. It's pretty horrible, all of the blowback from everything you do, even from quoting Psalm 27, lots of blowback, from stuff like that. So all that's floating in my mind as I miss the moose. I'm like, man, this is a hard one to swallow, because I think I've got a lot of pride, so that hurts with the viewership, criticizing me in my brain. But I also had a lot of need. I needed the meat, and then I have a genuine uh fear of failure and loathing of coming up short, just built into me, as many of us do, many people. I know it's super common. And it was just a matter of wrestling with it in my heart, and then learning, like, it's very hard for me to let go of things, always has been. But as I've made more and more mistakes in my professional life doing humanitarian aid work, and some of it's been very costly, and as I've lost more people, I guess, the practice learning that, your life will go on, you know, keep your shoulders loose, like Kung Fu Panda would say, and just face the next moment. But that's not to say that eliminates the super painful moments when the failure happens. And I think that you have to just embrace those and swallow them, because life is about feeling things. You gotta feel it all, to truly live. You've got to feel good and bad, and then you have to embrace the idea that you're going to. And then I just love that mental picture. Just keep your shoulders loosened up so you don't get too tight and freeze up, and just do what's next. I don't really know anything fancy to say about it besides that. It's taken a lot of trial and error, a lot of practice for me to be able to let go better, and I'm still not that good at it. Um, it's hard enough to let go not being the winner of a loan. I don't know if you wanted spoilers in here yet, but I chose, for some reasons I felt very strongly about, not to win when I knew there's two of us left. And that still stings. Not being the man at the end, not being the winner, that still stings, and it's hard to let go. But then I have to understand that if I define myself by my failures or successes, I never ever will be satisfied, a satisfied soul. Because no matter how successful you are, if you're defined by the success, we human beings aren't perfect. No matter how successful you are, there'll be failures that only you know about, and it'll rake you over the coals. You'll be absolutely miserable, dissatisfied, so much. And I came to grips with that on the show, and it became what I describe as like the most satisfied person I could possibly be. And that helps me and still helps me today to know that my satisfaction doesn't come from my success as much as just from what I am with the Creator. If he looks at it and he's pretty happy with what he set up, it was not all contingent upon my failures or successes. And I can let go and be free, to be happy and satisfied just being a creature, making his way through this world, bumping off the right obstacle and the left obstacle, making mistakes like everybody else, because I'm not better than everybody else, you know? If I define myself by successes or failures, it's trying to force myself into a position where I understand that I'm better than everybody else. And it's one of the most unhealthy things that I think a person can orient to. And I hope that answers your question a bit. Was that on topic?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd love to hear, I know Sandy's got a question. So when we come back from after her question, I would love to hear how you apply that as a parent too.
Yeah. And maybe we can tie them together. So, Timber, when you were sharing that experience, all I could think of was what a unique perspective to experience. Because I mean, you've lived off grid. You've lived where you grew up that way. Then you live your life. You've been around the world. You decide to go on this show where you're off grid again, and you have this whole experience that has its own frame and bubble of being, disconnected, and then to relive that experience again, but through the eyes of everyone else or through a camera, right? And then experience what you mentioned was the blowback of people. Then Monday morning, what is it? Tuesday morning quarterbacking, whatever that phrase is, what you could have done better or what you probably should have said, or, if they were there, they would have done this, X, Y, Z. I think that's a fascinating, very hard, but fascinating perspective. And just from everything you've shared so far in this podcast, I'm super just thankful that the Lord had rooted you so strongly that you could hopefully be able to weather that storm, because I'm sure it was much easier in some regards to be out in the wilderness than it was to come back and relive that experience through the eyes of everyone else.
Absolutely. That is the really difficult part, is because, you're so invested in what you've done out there. And it's this way for every contestant. I'm not special in this way. You're so invested in everything that you've done and in the choices that you feel you had to make, because there's serious constraint and lack of resources out there. I mean, you're trapped and you have to do this or this. And it's never shown. The situation is never shown why you had to do this or this. You're just trying something, and then you hear everybody you can't stop your phone from ringing. A lot of guys just abandon their phone for the whole 3 months that the show airs. But I couldn't do that. I had to kind of keep tabs. And it was just so much positive and negative. And the negative really surprised me because, I things that I felt were objectively good. Like I had this talk like, what do I do? Why do I do what I do? Because I want to go to other countries to help people who are living in fear and who want a helping hand to stand by, and I don't ask for anything. I'm not one of these guys that's like, well, if I give you this sandwich, you got to believe in Jesus, That's not part of my universe. But that's what I got in the face from so many hundreds and hundreds of people, like, oh, we know this blankety blank kind of colonizer, he's a religious colonizer. He's this and this and this. And it really hurt. It was really, really deep, deep hurt. And then I realized like, oh, well, the issue here is that I have to grow again. I have to grow another notch. And I thought I did that by doing the alone experience. But then as it played on TV, I realized I had a serious growth void that I had to grow to be able to ingest those kind of things and understand and not get cynical against all human beings once more. It was like it was just a new raw thing. So that was definitely harder than the survival. It was harder than all of that, and then it never goes away because it's preserved on TV there forever. You're always the guy who didn't win because this or this. So even today, like almost every single day, I'll have, on social media and other kind of stuff, people who have just watched the show, they'll be pouncing on me about like, I don't understand how stupid you could possibly be for being that close to the money and then doing what you did. I'll never understand that. And I was really rooting for you, but you've crushed me, or people bet money. They're like, we bet money on you. And now we're super mad. And just letting that go was just another growth step that I had to face and still do. It's not like growth for me is not like a one and done thing where like I grew over that notch. I'm fine with that kind of thing. I have to do it every day, every day to stay growing ahead of it, or it'll just catch up with you.
Yeah. Well, I hear ya. It's not the same, but Sandy will tell you that I get crap on TikTok all the time for being a Christian. And
I'm
so,
sure.
I think there
I'm
was a
sure.
moment where I said to her, well, do I need to change my background? Should I take my, God signs and Christian books down? And then it almost instantly was like, no, this is who I am and this
Yeah.
is what I believe. And so listen to me or don't listen to me, right? And
Mhm.
so the same is true for you, right? If you want to quote the
Absolutely.
Psalms, watch you or don't watch you, right?
Absolutely. Because at that point, you're not doing it to present an image, and this is what I want to tell people about alone. Like what I did and what I said out there had nothing to do with trying to present an image, because you're so alone that you lose the idea that the world even exists. You're not trying to present an image to them. You're just experiencing things and you're saying as you experience it. So I never want to hide the beauty that I'm seeing, and to me, I thought I saw God do this or do that for me out there. Well, if I'm seeing it, it was beautiful. And I never want to hide the beauty that I'm seeing. I'm going to be honest about it. And I think it was what's on your wall, I know it's about the same thing. You don't want to hide the beauty that you personally see. What else are we going to bring to the world besides a stereotypical dead face, the only thing I could present to the TV would be just a random survivalist with a face that was starving and skinny. I was like, no. I'm seeing these. I'm just experiencing it for me, maybe not for others. I'm going to speak about it and present it and interact with the camera about that in that way. And I know it felt to a lot of people like folks like us or like me on the show was trying to posture towards them, about Jesus or about our religious views, about eternal life. Absolutely not at all. Because what I found Jesus for is me. That's what's so special about it. I can't find Jesus for somebody else. So why would I want to pretend that I could? I can only find him for me. And that really has come into my parenting with my children too. I can't offer their soul to God. I can only offer mine. But if I do it in the best way I know how, and if it's beautiful, they'll see it and notice, they'll understand, and so don't ever hide what's on your wall behind you. I was admiring your backdrop earlier. God is good, y'all. And thinking about how beautiful it is that I've found that to be true. I might shout it from the housetops, but not because of anybody else, but because I am happy at having found life. So, yeah, sorry. I went way too deep into that. I know, but it's a topic
Love
that I feel
it.
so deeply about.
And the way that you modeled your faith in front of millions, but to be able to impact your children when they see that is not teaching them a Bible story. That is saying, look, Dad loves the Lord, and here's why, right? Like, why would you not want that too?
Yeah, that's what we hope. That's what we hope to have in our family. But, I see so many people trying to give God their children's souls, and I think that if we really get into homeschooling and organic parenting, it's so important. But we only have to keep in the back of our mind that that's theirs. It's theirs. I can't give God my child's soul. I can only show him how it looks the best that I can, because I'm meeting a lot of children that grew up in my generation. The reason I say this is this. I'm meeting so many of my age group of children that grew up in my organization or in my type of organization, off-grid militia, anti-government groups, or just super, super conservative Christian groups. Yeah, my heart is there, I'm conservative, and all this, but I'm meeting so many my age who are so angry. They're atheists. They are so anti-Christian. And I'm like, well, what went wrong there? I understand my family, but I don't understand theirs. But I'm pretty sure that systemically, Christian parents or parents of any religion, but I think parents think that it's their job to give the soul of their child to their belief system. And that goes against the very core, I think, of what God created when he set humans on this world to be autonomous and free, and as much as I can't give God my wife's soul, I also can't for my son. And it's really frustrating because I look at him and I'm like, yes, I want him to believe like me and to see the beauty that I see and to do it, but I can't take that territory by force with discipline or with, harsh words and take it from him and give it to God. Or I know for sure that he'll end up like I did for a while, an angry person feeling robbed, and I talk to a lot of, especially after the show, a lot of folks my age who grew up in a kind of a similar family, maybe not as extreme as mine, but kind of a similar family who's so angry, who live in anger because of that. I think because of that very topic right there. I don't know if that makes sense, and I understand that I kind of veered off topic here a little bit, I think, but
we love veering off topic. That's where the good stuff is. Yeah.
So, Timber, you brought up homeschooling and just that importance of, if I would summarize, just really modeling God's love versus trying to, win them for Christ, right? How important has it been in your life to make sure that your kids have a bigger, broader view of the world?
To me, it seemed really important, and maybe I've taken it too far. We've pulled back a bit. Since Alone, we've pulled back at how much I have the family overseas involved in this really heavy work. But at the same time, I've seen it bear fruit in my kids' lives. Levi and Elliot, they're 11 and 8, and they're in school here in the States now in our local public school. Because we've homeschooled, we've done this. We're just kind of doing different things for our kids, and I've seen it come out in ways that I really like, in kindness. My son Levi, I'm so proud of him. There's a couple kids in his class with autism or different things. There's a deaf kid, and he's really kind and caring to them because he's known how it's felt to not be able to speak to other kids in the community when we were in one country or another, to feel isolated because of that, to feel shoved out. He understands that. So I really, really value that being in my kids' lives. At the same time, there's a number of negative things that have come into my kids' lives through doing that, is in the form of various traumas and insecurities, not knowing where home would be, not knowing what pillow we would lay our heads on, for maybe too long, maybe. So there's a bit of both there, but I do think and hope that it will stretch them to have a larger view, and that can only help. It can only help even in spite of the difficulties.
One of your stories that you shared was because of your upbringing and you were really cocooned. It was just really that awe of learning that there was good in the world. There was evil in the world too, but there was a lot of good in the world to see. I don't know if you want to share about that a little bit at all, but I think what you're kind of describing is that there is a good and a bad, but there is an importance to being able to see creation in all of its glory and not just be cocooned or in a kind of microcosm where you don't really get to
Absolutely. Yeah.
interact and have empathy and compassion for others.
That's true. Echo chambers of thought are never good. There are good thoughts in closed communities that become echo chambers. There are good thoughts there, but the outcome as a whole is never good if it's closed in an echo chamber. For me, breaking out of that, I don't know how, but I'd always, all my life, felt when I'm out in the wilderness on my trap line as a kid or out in the woods, felt that I knew God was seeing me, could see me and would and wanted to show me life, something good. I've just had that conviction, and I kind of lost it for a number of years as, life was just so hard and full of stress and grief to me that I was like, no, I don't even like this world. I don't like anything in it. I want to kill myself. I want to get out of this, this world. And it breaks my heart to see people there. Some of the kids that were kind of in the community that I grew up with did commit suicide, and some tried, and are scarred. I don't know how God always pressed through to my mind that there was good that he would show me. And every time I was out there in the woods, just breathing free air and knowing that it's bigger. It's bigger than what we're saying. Just understanding that. And I think that as I left home and entered the world, man, it seemed so immense and so big. And I was surprised to find kind people in it, because we had believed that, everyone wanted to kill us. Everyone was on one side or the other, and I was surprised to find kind police officers, I was taught, I remember being a kid and praying that any police officer I saw, that he would die so that he couldn't kill us and steal the younger brothers and sisters, And I was pulled over and given a speeding ticket as I left home and went to college, and the dude was a perfectly normal human being. I was like, wow, that's proof that it is bigger than what we've been seeing. And as I move forwards, I try to keep that wonder in my mind, that, man, this is a good taste, but it's bigger than this yet, And I think that might be the nature of God, is to be like, wow, I taste life, I taste love, I see light. It's bigger even than this yet, And so I don't want my personal journey in seeking light from God to end with what I learned on alone, because on alone, I felt like I was just seeing a crack through the doorway, God was so good to me, filling my soul with healing and life once again. And then I just thought, it's got to be even bigger than this, and I think that was one of the curiosities in my mentality that has helped me to kind of look that way and then to see it and find it. I really want to write this kind of thing in a pamphlet or book entitled Step in All the Puddles, like from the perspective of a child with his first pair of rubber boots. And he's going to step in every puddle that he comes to with endless wonder, not knowing what's at the bottom of that puddle, And we never do that as adults. And that's growth mentality right there, is to be curious and experiment and to understand that it's bigger and, and it's endless. And I think that in my approach to leaving a really closed-minded community, that was so visible to me that it was bigger, that's easy for me to visualize moving forwards yet again, is that it's even bigger. And I don't know if that really even makes sense. I've never described it that way before.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So as much as that would be the perfect ending to this show, I do have one last question to ask you. So I used to think that my husband wasn't afraid of anything. And he explains it that he takes calculated risks, right? So he weighs the risk before making a decision. And so, but it seems like I'm not afraid of anything. It seems like you're not afraid of anything. It seems like you've been through it all and you'll just keep doing it all. How do you balance doing it all, right? How do you balance being brave enough to do it all with risk? And then how do you communicate that to your kids when they express fear of doing something?
I'm so glad you asked that question before we would end our discussion, because to me it boils down to the difference between two words: confidence versus conviction. Now, a conviction is a position you have in your heart that you believe is right, and confidence is just thinking that you're big enough to do something, right? Now, if I swagger around with confidence, it'll hurt every time I fall, because it'll show me that I'm wrong about that confidence. And this goes back to how we deal with failure too. So if I'm confident in something, myself or my abilities, or even in my spiritual relationship, I might be confident in that relationship itself. But then when I make mistakes and fall, disappointment, I might make the wrong choices and that kind of thing. But what I try to have in my life to temper the fact that I actually am afraid of a lot of things still, and I'm working on it. I'm afraid of my children being. I didn't even think I knew fear until I got children. You guys will know exactly what I'm talking about here. With children, I'm afraid of everything. I'm afraid that my daughter I'll be out at work and I'll be like, did she break her leg? My son Levi broke his leg, once, and we've got this little daughter now, and I'm afraid. But what I try to lean into is the word for what I do that could be considered dangerous, or moves I make in life, is the word conviction. Because, like, if you can envision a picture of a guy wanting to charge up a hill with enemies on it and take that hill. A confident guy thinks that he'll do it, you know. A guy with conviction in his heart just thinks that it must be done because it's right. And he doesn't know if he'll live or die. He doesn't know if if the hill will be taken, you know. But he's like, but I'm going. Yes, of course, I'm going to go up it. And why? Because it's what I believe in. It's what I believe is right and good and beautiful and true. And I think that everything is like, we got to find those things that we believe are. And to me, I believe that, you know, the resurrection, the promise of resurrection, eternal life, light, and the beauty of kindness from Jesus. I think these things are so objectively good that it seals my conviction. I'm going to do the things that go that way, even if I can't do it. Confidence, if I stand in confidence, I'll be like, oh, I can do it. But I'm experienced enough to know that I probably can't, you know? So confident people blow my mind because I don't seem to be able to muster up all that confidence. But what I do have sometimes is conviction. The fact that if there's something that's worth doing and it's the time and place, we're going to do it, you know? And we might fail. We might make a mess. We will make a mess. There'll be a great cost. You know, there'll be all of these things. But it's conviction that not that it can be done, but that it should be done or it must be done. And in this way, I would like to encourage moms, because I look at my wife going through what she's going through to parent. You know, we're older, you know, now, and we have this newborn, and we didn't think that we would, but, you know, after Alone, you know, you'll read my story on Alone, you'll be like, oh, I really started wanting a daughter, ask God for a daughter. I've got this beautiful daughter. I'm so happy. But it's full on, because I think that she is somewhere on the autism scale, and parenting her, we had therapists come today and try to help her learn to crawl, and she's almost 1.5 years, you know, and there's problems there. She doesn't sleep well at all because of, you know, different pains in her body and stuff like this. So I see my wife going through this, and I see her confidence be totally shattered that sometimes she can make it through the day on the level of sleep that she's going to get. But then I see that word conviction come into her eyes, that she's going to do it anyways, because it must be done. And I love that. I admire my wife for that. And I want to encourage all other mothers and parents in general out there that, you know, parenting is the hardest thing. You know, if you're going to be intentional and try to be like, let's do it well, you know, it's going to take all your time. It's harder than your job, you know, all this kind of stuff, you know, like we know. But approach it with conviction rather than confidence, so that you don't disappoint yourself too much. So that if you fail, you're like, I knew that would happen, but I'm gonna do it. I'm going to, because it has to. I must, because it's right, because it's beautiful and good and true. And if we can't be confident people, that's okay. Because I know fearless people as well, guys in aid work and stuff like this, that I know fearless people, and I am not one of them. But I think that conviction is a better land to live in.
Wow. That's awesome. I'm actually at a loss for words. So I have to tell you, you know, at the top of the hour, I said, well, I'm not really sure what I'm going to be able to talk to Timber about because I'm an indoor girl and I don't really understand this wild adventure lifestyle. This is one of my favorite interviews I've ever done, and we are in season 6.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. That's real. Thank you. Wow.
Okay, so I do have to know, were you ever scared of the grizzly bears? You talk about them in terms of they're going to steal my food. I have to make sure that they don't steal my food. But were you ever afraid that they were going to kill you?
Oh, yeah. There was that one time that I wanted to retrieve some of the bones or an arrow, try to look for an arrow or something. And I went there and I was like moseying around, and suddenly I felt all the hair stand up on the back of my neck, and the wall of brush is to the side. I can't see into it. And I knew that would only happen if that grizzly could see me right now. He sees me right now. And I got terrified at that moment. I'm like, he's going to maul me. I was actually walking, and before I put a step down, I had this vision pop into my head. I'm like, he charges out of the brush right here and shakes me like a dog, and mauls me. And I took my foot right back and I was like, nah, and I went in a different direction. I was definitely afraid about that time. But typically, like in my normal routine of life, I didn't think he would mess with me much because he just wanted to, mostly live in peace. But, I knew if I provoked him, I'd be dead.
Yeah, I think that would be enough that I wouldn't get off the helicopter. When we live in Colorado. And so when we first moved to Colorado, and I'm a beach girl. I grew up on the beach. Okay, we moved to Colorado. My husband takes the kids on a hike, and he comes home and he plugs his phone into the television to show me the pictures that he took. And he's got like a close up of a bear. And I said, well, exactly how far away were you? Right. And he's like, well, about 30 feet. And so I throw everybody in the truck, drive to Big Five Sporting Goods, walk up to the ammo counter and say, okay, look, I've got a .357 Magnum. I've got a Beretta. Like, I list all of the weapons that I own. And I'm like, you need to tell me what ammo I need to protect my children from bears in Colorado.
You are a good mom.
And I'm like, Jeff, you have to carry this now, right? And the guy's like, you need hollow points, and he's just like throwing ammo on the counter. And I'm like, I'll take it all. So
that is awesome. That is awesome. I love that story so much. Oh, I love that story. I love that story. Oh my gosh.
And it was funny, like I literally put them all in the truck. Like it's not like I just went to Big Five Sporting Goods. I'm like, get in the truck. So
that is awesome.
My husband's just standing there shaking his head. He's like, I'm not carrying all of this. It's heavy. I'm like, and you're not taking my children out in the woods again.
Oh my goodness. When you live in Colorado, how many bears have you bumped into to use all that ammo up?
So, yeah, he doesn't tell me if he sees any when he's out in the wilderness because he knows that I'll lose my mind. But they walk around our neighborhood, and I live in the suburbs. So I don't live in the woods. I live in the Colorado suburbs, and bears walk around my yard. Coyotes walk around my yard. I mean, bobcats. I mean, we have wildlife in Colorado. And so, but if you shoot them in your yard in the suburbs, they get a little angry. Like, I think it's illegal to shoot them within city limits. I'm like, look, if you threaten my children, I'll drag you across the threshold of my house and say I shot you in my foyer.
100%. Oh man. Whew. So.
Yeah.
Oh, well, don't feel like you have to watch the show just for my sake, because if it's boring, you don't have to make yourself do it. Because
I like reality TV. I watch Survivor. Like I like, which I know it's not the same. So I do enjoy watching people do things that I would never do. I just thought the previews that I have seen look terrifying. Like terrifying to the point where I wasn't sure I could watch it. But now, like I know you lived, so I'm gonna watch it.
Yes, I'm alive. So if you do get in watching it, because you won't know this little fact already from the book. If you do start in watching it, you got to know that the guy who stabs himself with an arrow is fine. Okay, so you got to know that in advance, knowing that like the show that part is terrifying. So he's fine. It was close. He had a close call, and it was one of the most dangerous moments in the show history. But when you get to that part, just be like, kids, he's totally fine.
Timber, just out of curiosity, is there camaraderie with the contestants? Do you guys, because you weren't really with each other, but for probably before and maybe after, but like,
yeah,
but they're,
And how did you know there were only like
share stories? Right?
There's some camaraderie for sure. We, all the 10 people from my season, we have like a group chat, and every month or so we're saying something to each other on it, or wishing each other happy birthday, something like that. We're like we're not like really close. Dub, you're probably familiar with who Dub is. He wrote the foreword in the book there. I consider him a close friend, and William, the winner, he would be a close friend if we lived kind of near each other, but he's because they're an awesome family, but he's just super, not up on social media that much and just, living an organic life, which I really respect. But Dub is my good friend. We spent 10 days all together before launching out into the wilderness while they do the camera training and all that. And then Dub and William and myself spent 10 days together after the show.
Yeah.
But you asked how I knew there's only one guy left. Like when they come out to do the health checks, after the rivers freeze up, they use the helicopter to come out and do the health checks. And so anytime you hear a helicopter, you're like climbing a tree and like looking around, like, where's it going, And so because they do false stops to confuse you too, so that you don't know, because they'll like land in a random clearing to confuse you, but eventually you get dialed in like to how long it takes. And then I knew there's like that guy over there, he's the only one, and it was true,
So you were guessing. It's not like you didn't know for sure. All right. Well, don't tell me any more about it because I'm going to read the book. So thank you for being with us today. You were just a wealth of inspiration and insight. I love your story. I love your faith. I love how you live it out. Thanks for taking time away from your kids and your wife to be with us today and to bless our listeners with your insights and experience.
It's absolutely my pleasure. And thank you. Thank you both. And thank you for your very thoughtful and deep questions as well. I mean, it's one thing to talk about like, oh, so how did you shoot the arrow? It's like, I'd much rather talk about these matters of the soul.
I wouldn't even think to ask a question like, how did you shoot the arrow? So that's funny. All right, let's close the show. Listeners, this is all the time that we have for today. We are so excited that Timber Cleghorn joined us for this hour. We will put links to his book and his website in our show notes. And listeners, we just love that you choose to spend an hour with us every week. Again, be sure to sign up for our free newsletter at thebrainymoms.com. You can find us on every social media platform at The Brainy Moms. You can find Sandy on TikTok at The Brain Trainer Lady. That is all that we have for you today. We hope that you feel a little bit smarter after spending this time with us. We'll catch you next time.